A great question has power. It can churn up latent feelings or beliefs we didn't even know were there. A great question can stop us in our tracks, change our perspective. Good answers fix problems in the short term. Good questions have the power to create lasting change. And great questions, well, that can change a worldview. Asking good questions was a technique that John Wesley used, a devout student of the book. Surely he learned it from the best of the best. Jesus was a master at asking great questions. The questions Wesley's Holy Club asked and answered were designed to expose the souls of those who participated in weekly accountability. And those questions still today have power to expose our weaknesses, to call us to account for making spiritual progress. Wesley developed similar avenues for accountability in the Methodist class and band meetings, using discipleship questions to help people grow in faith. If you've ever asked somebody, how is it with your soul? You totally get how that can change the spiritual atmosphere. But even beyond those accountability questions in the Holy Club and in class and band meetings, Wesley developed 19 other questions to probe the hearts and motives of potential Methodist preachers. And those questions have had a kind of staying power. You know what? Since 1773, pastors in the United Methodist tradition have answered these 19 historic questions as a way of agreeing together to how we will live into this ministry life. Candidates for ordination examine these questions and we prepare to answer them at annual conference during which we're ordained. It's the beginning point of our connection. It's these questions. You have to wonder why Wesley chose questions. Why not statements of faith or something that sounds more like a manifesto? Was his choice an act of practicality, or was it a stroke of brilliance? I suspect the latter, because Wesley chose to ask questions of those seeking to lead in the early Methodist movement. Pastors for nearly 250 years have had their worldview shaped, their calling clarified, their potential unearthed by these 19 potent ideas presented as theological affirmations with a question mark. By the time an ordinand stands to answer these questions publicly, he or she has already been approved by their district committee. They've been approved by their board of ordained ministry. An appointment's probably been chosen for them. The candidate's family has arrived from out of town to celebrate the big event. No one reasonably expects the candidate to answer in a way that would preclude ordination. And so it's sort of like a wedding in that way. While the public profession is authentic, the commitment seems to have already been made way before the big day. And much like a wedding, one might well answer those important questions faithfully on the big day, but then somewhere along the way you sort of lose sight of them. You forget the substance of them in the years to follow. The first time I read those questions, when I was preparing for ordination, they meant a ton to me. But I have to say, after that, I can't say that I so much as thought about most of them again until almost 20 years after I first answered them publicly. In just recent years, I pulled those 19 questions out again when conflicts within the United Methodist Church began to heat up. Pointed questions were being leveled at opposing sides about what matters theologically. As a blogger, I was surprised to find some of those questions even being leveled at me. I've had people take issue with my use of the term orthodoxy. Do I have a right to decide what orthodoxy means? I would say, no, I don't have a right to decide what orthodoxy means, neither does anybody else. Orthodoxy has an accepted definition. It has a meaning. Methodism is another term that has been tossed around as if it too can be redefined according to women culture. And love. Evidently, in some circles, people get to define what love is, while other circles are labeled as unloving or unjust just by virtue of their disagreement with those definitions. That's a concern. You know, as the debates and contemporary questions swirl, I'm drawn back to these 19 historic questions. In them, I've discovered something unexpected and sublime. I've found that rather than becoming distant and lifeless, these questions have only been enriched by time. If I had to put the whole meaning of these 19 questions into one word, I'd say wholehearted. After 20 years of ministry, I now have experience to support the richness of these questions. I understand freshly that knowing what you believe matters. In light of this denominational turmoil, I recognize the importance of publicly, wholeheartedly committing to our doctrines. So in these questions, I hear the heart of a man at the helm of a new and growing movement. When he asked his candidates whether they were resolved, whether they were earnest, whether they would study and be diligent in instructing others, Wesley was not after company men or career women. He was looking for fruitful, wholehearted followers of Jesus, willing to give their all to this Methodist way. It was his vision that these questions both inspire and require a cohesive unity, one heart, one mind, one mission. So I commend these questions to your study for precisely that reason, that you also will find a renewed commitment to wholehearted connection to our doctrine and mission as Methodists.